Here I've got some sheet metal. That's going to be the sides of my new furnace. I cut out a former. This is going to be the base around which I'm going to wrap this sheet metal. In the center you can see the cavity size, and that little crucible is going to fit in there. It'll probably hold about 3 kilos of bronze, which is better than my 1.3 kilos in my little electromelt furnace, and that should be pretty good and all that I need. I've taken the piece of sheet metal. I had to trim it down a bit because I think it was too thick. It's down to about 70 mils, which would give a better top. I've wrapped it around this former that I cut. I've put these little metal tabs in here to stop the refractory, once I've filled it up, from dropping out when it's hard from this sheet metal, because it's quite slippery. Given it a lap joint here with a couple of pop rivets to keep it in place. Then I must drill some holes and put these handles through, and I must just weld up where it's cracked here. And this is my exhaust pipe. I'll wrap newspaper around it to stop it from sticking to the refractory, and when it's dry I'll pull it out and I'll have a hole that's 60 mils diameter, which is not too bad. 60 mils, that's quite a big exhaust pipe. You can always close it with a brick or fire brick or something on top, just to stop too much heat escaping. Okay, so that's the welding done. Okay, so there we have it. I've drilled the holes for the handles, put the handles in, got little spacer pieces of wood underneath it to keep the handles level or horizontal. I've marked the outside with a Koki pen to ensure that once I start packing the refractory in and this piece of sheet metal starts to move around, I can line it up again. The center one, my exhaust, I won't be able to see, so what I've done there is I've marked it now and I super glued it, so that should be almost set. And so now pretty much ready to start loading in and mixing the refractory. So I'm using this Calder Refractory. This is an insulation refractory, and then this one here, I don't even know what it is, but it's far more dense. It's got little stones in it and looks like almost asbestos or fiberglass wool that's mixed in it. And anyway, here I'm mixing up. I need it to be fairly dry because I don't want it leaking out the bottom. So yeah, this is still a bit wet, so let's add some more. I don't know if you can see the little hairy fibers on there and the stones. Okay, so I'm going to start with the lid. Make sure the handles are tight. Oops, that block's loose. Thought it was glued, not glued. Glued, 3 glued, that's alright. I've used about 1/3 of the insulation refractory to 2/3 of the more like cement concrete refractory. And of course I'm not going to have mixed enough for this, so I'm going to have to mix some more, I think, or maybe I'll make it. Just vibrate it in so that it can get stuck in the thread of the handle, get some air bubbles out. Make sure it goes under the tabs. Looks good. So there we have it. That should be good. Let's see how it comes out tomorrow once it's set. Okay, so the shell now, I've wrapped it around the former to get the basic shape. I have gripped it with some vice grips, top and bottom, and drilled some pop rivet, 5mm pop rivet holes, 7 of them, and now I must use a hand drill and drill through the other side, and then I'll put in a pop rivet. Just find one here, put in one of these pop rivets, and clamp it together. That would be the Okay, so that's the pop rivets done, looking pretty good. Distorted it a little bit, but it doesn't really matter. The shape of the furnace is more or less round, which is good enough. Now what I need to do is work out the angle of the air inlet. So that's got to go in and swirl, create a swirling motion, and start at the bottom of the crucible and work its way up, distributing the heat evenly as the gas escapes. Okay, so here we've got a piece of pipe, PVC pipe, that I'm going to use as my inlet pattern. The refractory will get packed around it. When it's finished, it'll just burn out, or I can probably pull it out. So what I've done is I've marked it where I'm going to cut it off, and then this is the inner diameter, the former that I'm going to use for the cavity inside the furnace, and then I've just marked it here where it's going to be cut, and that's going to get stuck on the outside of the former when I put in my refractory. That should work. So the blower is going to go on here, gas pipe coming up through it with a couple of holes in it, gas and air mix in here and then goes through, and this is the former for the inner cavity of the furnace, and it's going to cause all the gas and air is going to go through the ignite and do a spiral in there before exiting out through the exhaust pipe on the top of the furnace. So let's see how we're going to fasten this on and cut the hole in the shell for that to go through. Okay, so the easiest way for me to cut the hole in the shell and get it fairly accurate would be to do the following. I've marked the position where this pipe is, and we'll put another piece of pipe in its place and just line it up with the lines I've just drawn. I'll mark the top just roughly, it doesn't have to be exact, there's no rocket science involved here. And then just from above, I'll draw a line along the edge of this curve. So that curve then I'll put it against the edge of the outer shell after I've cut it. Put some masking tape or just use a Koki pen and mark it. This being the top, easy to put in the bandsaw and cut it in the correct position. So let's go cut it and see. So because I'm a bit lazy to use the file on this big hole, I've decided to use one of my old welding inspection tools. I used to call this a lollipop, I'm not sure exactly what you would call it, but this is a huge amount quicker. As you can see, that works pretty well, so let me finish it and we'll get back. Oh wow, how's that for luck? Fits perfect. So that can go in there, that's how it's going to fit. Let's put our inside back in. And there you see how it's going to fit in. I made 4 little tabs. What I'm going to do with these, I'm going to put them against the side of the shell. I've drilled some holes there, you can see a hole. and that will go inside like that, basically that sort of thing, just to grip the refractory on the inside and prevent the shell from actually slipping off the refractory should I ever try to move it. Okay, so there are my 4 metal tabs inside that will just grip onto the refractory and keep the shell from slipping off. And I've put it onto a 3mm steel base plate. It's just resting on here. And then I've super glued just little bits of wood around the shell so that when I put the refractory inside and start compacting it and making sure it's nice and level, that the shell doesn't distort, so it keeps its circular shape. Okay, so there I've put in the burner tube. Little gap there, but that shouldn't be a problem. The cement is pretty dry and doesn't exactly leak everywhere. And I've roughened up the joining area, or the mating area between the furnace bottom and the side walls. It's still pretty wet. I'm going to mix a refractory for the sides, and by then the bottom should have set even more, and it should be ready to add the next refractory on top. So there you have it. Just put in the final amount of refractory, leveled it off as best I could. It's not leaking out the burner cavity there, so all looks good. On the other side there you see the lid, and that's already starting to set nicely. So we'll see what happens tomorrow. Should be hard. Easier said than done. See the wet cardboard rolled up on the bottom lip of this can, which wasn't my plan, but we'll get it out. At last, at last. Wow, that doesn't look too bad. So that lives in there. Perfect. I need to make a little base that this can rest on, just underneath, so that there's plenty of space for the gas to spin around the base before it starts actually coming up. So that I'll just do in a little Tupperware bowl or something like that. Good. So let's just level the top so that the lid fits on nice and snug. We don't lose any hot air through the cracks. There, that looks great. There we have the lid. Let's just clean this up a bit. Okay, so I needed a base for my crucible to stand on, so I grabbed my wife's Tupperware dish and filled it up with refractory. Day later, that came out, not too bad. That goes down to the bottom of the furnace, and the crucible, which I've cleaned up a bit, sits on top of it. The gas burner that I made is just a piece of 48mm steel pipe. I drilled a 10mm hole through it, and I pushed this piece of 10mm copper pipe through it, folded over the end, and I drilled a few small holes in it. The holes face that way. Air from vacuum cleaner blower gets blown through here, mixes with the gas, that impinges at an angle to the central cavity, so your flame will spin around and go around the bottom of the crucible, heating it up pretty evenly as it goes up and exits through the top hole. Okay, let's test it, see how it goes. Air might be a bit too strong. I think I might have to put a regulator on it, but let's put the lid on and see how it goes. Air's too strong. Okay, so you had to go to plan B. How do you like my custom air blower? It's even got 2 heat selections, but that ain't going to melt no metal. So I've got the gas pipe connected, and yeah, seems to be okay. The vacuum cleaner was just way too strong, and even restricting the flow didn't really help. So I downgraded to old hairdryer. Let's try it. Little bit of steam still coming out. Pipe's just slightly warm, but that's probably from the hairdryer, and all should be good. Yeah, it's molten. Okay, that's been sucking. How's that for luck? Flask empty, look at that. That's skill. Okay, piece of cardboard. Let the pot stand on the cardboard. Don't close the hole, otherwise the hot air will go back through and burn my hairdryer. Done. So it didn't come out too bad. All in all, it's a good casting.